Alright, so I'm going to install these ported upper and lower intake manifold on my 3.7 Mustang. These are by AMR, Auto Mafia Racing. We also just put on BBK headers. Not sure either upload before or after this video. Also got new Coney, I believe it is, shocks and struts that I'll be putting on here soon. New drilled and slotted rotors and pads. And check out the Mustang playlist if you want to see all the other mods. Aluminum one-piece drive shaft, MMR water pump pulley, air-aid cold air intake, tuned by MPT, cherry bomb, exhaust. So make sure you check out the Mustang playlist on the channel if you want to see any of that as well. Alright, so to start, you should disconnect your negative cable from your battery. Pop it off down here, make sure it doesn't spring back up and reconnect. Reason for doing this, well, one, some people do it for safety anyways when you're working on a car, but you want your ECU to be able to relearn for the new intake manifolds that are ported. I actually talked to MPT about retuning for the headers and my ported manifolds here, and they said that a retune's not required, but you should still reset the battery so that the ECU can do its job to relearn for the new airflow, whether a tune's required or not. Loosen this hose clamp so you can, it's gonna be a little stuck on there, rubber seating to that metal a little bit. Loosen this hose clamp so you can pop your intake pipe off. Whether you have a cold air intaker or the original one, you need to loosen your clamp from your throttle body there and pop the hose off so we can get to these bolts here, because we're going to have to take the throttle body off of the upper manifold. But before you pop this off here, you'll need to disconnect these so you don't bust them. I believe this one will just pop off like so. And again, that's a little different because I got a cold air here. Then you got to pull this back to get that off, or you might just feel that's hard plastic, so I want to try to detach it from here instead of pulling this whole thing out. Alright, so I got all connections off of there so I didn't bust any while I was wiggling around to pop it off of there. You're going to need to disconnect this line to take your throttle body off. It looks like it's taped here. Mine's already been untaped from previous when I did my plugs, and I had to take this off to do my plugs. But you need to pop this off, so you need to squeeze that with the needle nose pliers or clamps or something, and then wiggle it off as you squeeze down on that clamp. Then you should be able to, this is just rubber right here, so you should be able to just flex this out of your way once you pop it off of here. Well, you would be able to if it wasn't for that little bolt there, that bracket, so I gotta take that bolt out so I can move it. But we're detached here, but I'm hung up right there. So once you get all your bolts out there, those are 5/16 8 mil, just like this bolt was. Should be able to look at that off of there. Oh Jesus! Be a little more gentle with it than that. Sorry about the chickens and ducks, you're gonna be hearing them off and on. So basically, you just got to work on removing everything else that's holding this back. All right, so you got this. Take the bolt out, wiggle, pop it out. You got this bracket here. Take that bolt out, loosen the bottom bolt so it'll pivot out of your way there. You got this here. Take those two bolts out, wiggle and pop it out. You got this little plastic clip here down in there. You pretty much just got to rip it out. Same with that one right there. And then it looks like 7 mounting bolts. You got 4 in the front here, and then 1, 2, 3. Break those loose and this should come off. Also this I popped out, of course. Right there, you got to pull those tabs back and pop this out. So I loosened all my bolts. All these stay in. They won't come out. They're beveled on the bottom or whatever, except for this one for some reason. This long one here in the middle will come out. The remainder of those are going to stay in there. So then, careful not to bust anything. Double check, make sure everything's disconnected but then it should be free. It might stick a little. I've had this off of here before doing plugs like I mentioned, so it's more of a two-handed affair, and these bolts might catch up, which this one here did on me, even though it's completely out. It's like catching. Anyways, easier said than done with one hand while recording, but then it'll just pop off if it sticks a little bit. Just wiggle it. All right, so there is your upper manifold removed. So now to get the bottom, same basic thing. Make sure everything's unplugged and whatnot. You're gonna have coolant come out of the front and the back. You have to remove the bolts from this housing so you can pull it forward off this nozzle here, and then on the back side you got this hose right here. That's part of it, the manifold that comes off. So you got to detach this as well, and we'll get to that. You got fuel lines, your fuel rails under here, which can come out with it, and you just have to disconnect this fuel line. But you're going to have to transfer your fuel rails and injectors. But you'll definitely want to take this out as an entire unit with the injectors and fuel rail attached to the lower plenum, for one reason being that it's going to pour gas all over the place. The other reason being we will discuss here in a second. Alright, first and foremost, you want to be careful with this gas line. It could have built-up pressure in it, so when you take it off, fuel can shoot out. One thing you can do is wrap a rag around it when you go to pop it off, so if anything sprays out, the rag catches it and whatnot. But you need to pop this red safety clip out first, so it's all the way up there, and you see that notch right there. You just stick a little flathead in there to pop it out, like so. And then see how the separate section here, you should be able to push up on these and pull this out in a similar fashion, which is the lock, and then you should be able to pop your fuel line off there. So that's what you're looking at, and as you can see, it broke mine because it's very thin, itty-bitty plastic, and I swear they do that on purpose, so you break shit so they can make more money off of you, or you go, oh my god, I broke it, I don't know what I'm doing, and you give up and take it to them. But anyway, so you want to try not to do that, which is really kind of hard. You got like a millimeter of plastic there you're trying not to break. But I should be able to piece it back in there when I'm done, and then slide that red lock piece, wherever the hell I put it, back over these two pieces, and it'll lock in place. So aside from some pulling and wiggling, that should be free to come off now. And like I said, be careful about gas shooting out there. Also, when you're removing this, and everything for that matter, make sure you don't drop anything down in your intake there. Well, that was a bad idea. I got gasoline going everywhere. See, I told you, big freaking mess. So there's your fuel rail. Obviously you don't want to get any crap in it, so I shouldn't even set that down on the concrete. Don't let any junk get in there. Same for up here. Just noticing some of these injectors have some nasty stuff on it like that, so try not to let that fall down into your fuel system, fuel ports, whatever. So you would have to pop these injectors out anyways, because obviously if you're doing the ported manifold swap, then you got to take them out and switch them over to the new manifold. So one way or the other, you got to get the fuel rail off of there, and you will be taking the injectors out anyways, to switch them over to the new one. So I guess no matter what, you're going to have fuel go just everywhere. Although if you can manage to get it off with all the injectors still in place with it, which is what I initially tried, you won't have all the fuel coming out as long as you don't tip it out that back nozzle. But like I said, I was struggling to get it out while keeping all the injectors intact without bending the fuel rail, so that's what I did, and just made a huge mess instead. But I guess you got to choose your battles. So again, you want to keep your fuel system very clean, especially the injectors, so they don't get clogged up. So I am now going to detach all of them from the harness and set them aside. That way I don't get any crap in them while I'm finishing up taking this off of here. Alright, so I'm gonna have to splice this in the video somewhere. I had the whole car back together, started it, and then I had a massive fuel leak, and I know why. It's because I didn't get these clips back on right. I'm not sure what parts I'll include and cut now because of this, but it was very difficult to get these clips back in with everything on the car and then putting the fuel rail back in. I had stated in the beginning that I had debated taking this out as one whole unit, which is what I should have done apparently, and is what you should do. But I had reasons for not doing that because I was afraid of busting the clips trying to get the injector connectors off, because it's definitely something that you don't want to bust, and then it, you know, it's loose. So that was part of my reason for doing that. So I was afraid I might bust those clips and have issues because of that. But that made it near impossible to get these clips on correctly, because you couldn't get your fingers down in there to push them on, whereas you can now. I can just slide it right on. So basically what happened was, I got all these on wrong. Well, not all of them, but so the metal's supposed to stick through that slot there, but then the bottom of this is supposed to hook. I'm trying to find my fingers here in the camera. It's supposed to hook in that slot there, and you can see it's above it. So this clamps it down tight so it can't leak. So basically a lot of those I did not achieve that, snapping them on with it on the car, so I got a huge leak on a lot of the injectors. So you'll definitely want to take this off as a unit and then transfer the fuel injectors and fuel rail and clips to the new Plenum, and then install it back onto the car as one piece. So the only issue you got to be careful with is popping these off, and like I said, they work just like these. You got to snap your clip up, and then you can depress the black tab and then pop it off, but you don't have a lot of room to do that. And so basically I couldn't get any of these with my fingers. I had to use small screwdrivers and pry up, and then like it was so hard, then when it would snap I'd be afraid it was going to break, which some you might. So you just gotta kind of do the best you can to get those popped up without breaking them, and that one back there was a real nightmare. This side's harder overall. This side has more room until you get to that very back one, but you just basically got to get like a little flathead in there. I use this for most of them. This helped on some of them because of the angle of the head, and I can't remember, I might have used this for that very back one. But you got to get something long, sturdy, and flat under them to pop those tabs up, and then you can depress the black piece, squeeze it in, and then pop it off. Some I was able to do with my fingers, some I had to push on that with a flathead and pop up. And also one of these I had pop up too far. Apparently that can happen. The red piece popped up too far, and then I couldn't fully depress the black tab to get it to disconnect, so I had to snap it back down and pull it back up again, the red piece, just far enough. So apparently those can over travel as well. So if you got one that's real stuck and won't come off even though your tab's up, that might be why. Alright, so at this point, with the fuel rail and injectors set off the side and all that, all you got left is the coolant here. Like I said, you got to detach this housing. There's a few bolts that holds that on, and you'll have coolant come out of there, and then that line on the back, same as well, and then your mounting bolts. So this is a real nightmare back here trying to get this off. Saved you all the cursing, so do yourself a favor and undo this shit, because this damn thing's in the way. So I broke this off trying to get it unhooked from there, and then you got all these damn plugs. This thing goes down on here, you pretty much just have to twist and rip it off. And then I undid some of these plugs so I could get them. This one here, the red one's a pain in the ass because it's like this, so you have to stick a screwdriver down in there, pry that little tab there outward so you can pop it off and downward. Don't forget where all this shit goes. And then I undid the first coil here. That way I can actually move this thing out of my way to get to this, because I am having a hell of a time getting that off. Then also the couplet that plugs into the O2 sensor there, that thing holds it back. So this clip here that I'm trying to get off is just like this one. So the way this contraption works is the gray ring actually stays on that pipe. So you will pull the black piece off and away by depressing the gray tabs on both sides, and the black will pull away off over top of the gray. The gray will stay behind, clamped to that ring on that pipe. Alright, so I got it with this. I actually tried this the first damn time. Squeeze on this two top sides and it opens it a little, and if you jerk and wiggle it enough it pops off, which I tried that numerous times and it wasn't working, but I guess messing with it so much and shoving screwdrivers under there and trying to get things, I guess it loosened up some. So when I just tried again for the 4th or 5th time, squeeze down on the top on both sides. It might have also helped getting this out of the way finally. I squeezed it down from both sides and then I was able to pop it off. So, but it's not easy. So now I pull back on this. Coolant should come out of there, so you're going to want to pan down there to catch it. Yeah. And with that rear line off, then you take the bolts out of this housing. There's one there, one down there, one right there, and one on the bottom side down here. Still 5/16 8 mil. And then you pull this off and you probably have some coolant come out of here too. Just pull and wiggle. Oh well, I guess it would help if I took my bolts out the rest of the way, huh? And there goes all the coolant. So that should be everything. See, my housing there is loose. So now you just gotta take the mounting bolts up out through there and then it should pop off. So these bolts, unlike the upper, they all come out. So go ahead and pull them out so you don't lose them. And there's 2 bolts hiding behind this block looking thing here. Let me get in there and show you. There's one. There's one on each side, on the very back side there. Alright, this should pop off now. I mean, get careful with that because it's plastic, but as long as it's not too stuck on there, you can use it to pull up on. And there it is. I imagine, yeah, it's got to be that gas that I spilled. Wipe all this up. So Mafia, it looks like they send you all new gaskets, so some people would argue that these are lifetime gaskets here. Because they're rubbery, yeah, they're still malleable, so you can replace them if you want or don't. It's up to you. These are, my upper is way more soft than the ones on the lower. Well, a little bit. But anyways, these are rubbery and squishy, so they're supposed to be lifetime gaskets, but, you know, like that. Well, that's right, this one's a brand new one, because when I took it off from my plugs, I went ahead and replaced it because I didn't want to have to go through it again if they started leaking. So technically they're supposed to be lifetime gaskets. As long as they're still rubbery and malleable, they supposedly should still reseal, which is probably accurate. But at your own discretion, replace if you want. Personally, I prefer Velcro. But even Mafia includes new gaskets, so if you got them, use them. If not, up to you if you buy them or not. So now I'm going to clean these mating surfaces here. Obviously don't get any junk down in there where your valve is, so I'm going to do my best to clean this up. A good thing to use is brake parts cleaner. Spray it into the rag and then wipe. So I'm going to work on getting this cleaned up here before we install the new one. If you guys want to see a comparison between these, to see the port work and whatever, I'll post a video of that too. I'm not including it here because I'm trying to make this a little shorter if I can, because usually my repair videos are way too long. So here's the new gaskets. You just kind of go around, shove them in all the way around. These kinds are nice because they'll stay in when you flip it upside down and not fall out. So those new gaskets, whether you're just watching this to, for whatever reason you take them off, or if you're doing the swap like I am, I mean, look at the difference. Those are definitely a lot more soft. I see some of these are like, yeah, I would definitely recommend at least replacing them on the bottom manifold, if anything. Make sure these are here, okay? So they came off on my old one with it, and they came pre-installed on the new one. But just make sure you have those, or you're going to have a major coolant leak if you don't. So make sure those are present. Got my surfaces cleaned up there decently. They're not perfect, but that should do. So get this thing on here and start hooking everything back up. Alright, so I searched for about half hour, checked several threads, and I couldn't find the torque spec and sequence for this lower plenum here. I did find the top, because it seems like everyone takes the top off to change their spark plugs, so that was easy to find. The top one, 89 inch-pounds of torque, not foot-pounds, inch-pounds, okay? And I did get a pattern for that one. I'll post all that up here in a sec, but like I said, the lower I couldn't really find anything on. The lower, I believe, should be a little tighter than the upper. So with the upper being 89 inch-pounds, which is 7.4 foot-pounds, so you might as well round it off 8 foot-pounds. I'm going to say this lower is probably 10 to 12 foot-pounds of torque. And I can tell you I definitely went 12 on mine. So it handles 12, no issue. And so basically whenever you're tightening really just about anything down, but especially like plastic plenums and whatnot, start from the center out, because the plastic will flex and bow and whatnot. And if you start from the edges and go in, then it'll basically create like a rainbow effect in it. So you want to start from the center out. So you're just going like a crisscross pattern from the center out. What I did was go here, 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 there, which was a little off. I should have started one back, but that's what I did, and it tightened up just fine. So I would say 10 or 12 foot-pounds. I went 12, and just crisscross pattern. Start from the center and work your way out, going back and forth as you work your way out to the edges. 10 to 12 foot-pounds of torque. I did 12. Go over it 3 or 4 times, because you'll notice as you go over it, these other bolts will loosen because the plastic really flexes. So you need to go over it 3 or 4 times. Start out with a lighter amount, not quite 10 to 12 foot-pounds, and then after you go over it once or twice, then go to 12 foot-pounds, and then go over it once or twice more, just to make sure they all get tightened up, because this plastic does flex as you're tightening it. And so a bolt that was previously tight, as you do your pattern and get out to the edges, the plastic moves and they'll get loose again. But if you go over it enough times, then they'll all snug up. And these ones, you can actually feel them snug up. Like, you know, they'll go and it's like, and you're like, okay, yeah, that's pretty tight right there. So but that's what you do. Make sure you go over it enough times to make sure they're all tight, because they will loosen up on you a couple times as you go over the pattern over and over, trying to get your torque spec. So now that's all torqued down, you can work on hooking everything back up to it. So I put those 2 lines back in here, and then I got to install the injectors and the fuel rail. So this, oh shoot, I forgot that freaking plastic piece was still on this other one, so I gotta take this off and transfer it. So you gotta pull these up with a little flathead to slip it over that ring, and then put it on the new one in the same orientation. So now with that ring in place, I should be able to snap that back on like so. There we go. Then I gotta bolt this back down, slide that over. You're gonna have to give that a little push to get past that rubber seal there. Bolt that back down. That'll be about 12 foot-pounds of torque as well. Crisscross pattern, center out. So I had to shove pretty hard with both hands to get that on there, so you don't gotta baby it, just gotta kind of manhandle it on there, and it finally popped over. And I noticed that now my bolts don't line up. I mean, they went in, but they're kind of offset. If you have this issue, just turn the water pump to the left or the right so that they'll line up. One thing I forgot to mention here, this seals because of that rubber ring there, but right here where it goes against the block or plate or whatever you want to call it, you'll want to put a little bit of RTV sealant around that gasket maker so you don't get a leak there. When I pulled mine off, mine was still intact, so it should be okay. You should probably scrape it and put new RTV on there. I did not, so I'm going to monitor it, make sure I don't develop any leaks or anything. If I do, then I'll just pop it back off and put some fresh RTV on it. But under here, you should scrape that off, clean that surface, and put fresh RTV sealant around it. Alright, so remember I spliced the video earlier back explaining to take this out complete with the injectors and fuel rail attached. So at this point in the video I was trying to explain that you got to pop these down in there and be careful not to tear those little rubber O-rings, which is what seals it. If you tear those, you will get a freaking gas leak. So anyways, in that splice I discussed, take that out as the whole unit, and then you'll need to transfer your injectors and this fuel rail here to the new piece. This was impossible on the car because I couldn't get the clips lined up. It was also pretty impossible to get that thing shoved down over the injectors, as I was just showing there with a hammer motion. So while you have it off the car and you transfer it, if you're doing a swap like I am, you'll have to push the injectors top part up into the rail first. You can see that blue ring there. Blue ring goes up, red or orange ring goes down. But you got to shove them up into the tubes on the rail just to the right distance to where you can get that clip slid over the rail and over the injector, as I displayed in that splice section earlier in the video. And then you'll tighten down the fuel rail to about 10 foot-pounds of torque, and as long as they're clipped in place properly and shoved down into the manifold, you should be good. So like I said, my piece broke on me. I'm definitely not going to try to do this one-handed while recording, so I'm going to fit the pieces back in the way they're supposed to set, and then slide this lock on over it, and it should hold it all in place even though it's broke. So yeah, it only took me about 20 seconds and I got it back together there. So you got to make sure you slide it down enough to where this is all past that ring, and then I had to hold those two pieces in place and slip that over it, but pretty freaking solid. So alright, now I can put my upper back on. So make sure you move everything out of the way so you can get your upper on here. So I'll get my gasket shoved in there and then we'll get this thing on. Almost forgot I got all this stuff back here unplugged, trying to get to that clip there. So before you throw that on there, if you did any of that like I did, make sure you get all that plugged back in. Alright, so there's the new upper. Don't forget there's 4 bolts along the front or driver's side, whatever you want to call it. 3 on this. Don't forget your long one there. Right here's the, I'll post it up. Here's the one sequence I was able to find. This came from a performance shop, so this should be good to go. Like I said, it's mostly center out, and torque spec on this is 89 inch-pounds, which is 7.4 foot-pounds. Of course, with that low of a value, you should absolutely be using an inch-pound wrench and not a foot-pound wrench. But again, go over it 3 or 4 times because it's likely those will loosen up on you, the plastic flexes. So make sure you go over the pattern at least 3 times to make sure none of them come loose. Alright, so after you have that torque down, and I actually had to go over it 4 or 5 times because some of them kept going loose on me. Then you got to work on putting everything else back on. Obviously, I'm going to start with the throttle body here, get that out of the way, and then we'll work on hooking up all the other little odds and ends. Kind of forgot to put these back on, which, yeah, that one you can't get to now because the plenum's in the way. And then this one, well, you'd have to undo that fuel line. So we were supposed to throw those back on, but I ain't gonna worry about it because I am definitely not taking that back apart to throw those over the freaking fuel rail. Yeah, so I got my new gasket in there because they sent me a new gasket, so went ahead and installed that. Torque these down crisscross, like do top right, then bottom left, then top left, then bottom right. I'm gonna go for like 10 foot-pounds torque on that one. Alright, so your intake track hooked back up. Whether you have the cold air like me or the factory box, which I would assume if you're doing imported manifolds you already have a cold air intake. Anyways, you know, make sure your hose clamps are on straight and not crooked, and the most important thing is make sure you got this sealed all the way around the throttle body opening, because a lot of times people will try to shove it on there and not realize clear at the bottom where they can't see it, that rubber lip is actually flipped up and inside of the throttle body, so then you're sucking all kinds of nasty crap in there and you don't want that. So make sure you verify all the way around it, either visually or by feel, that that's actually all the way around and sealed. So usually I start with the bottom and the back side to make sure those are on first, and then I pull the lip around on the front, but you still want to double check. So then we got this thing left. Okay, we'll pop in there. I'm gonna do this bracket here. Let's see, so this will reach around to that. You might be able to shove that on without squeezing that. Yep, okay. This one, that's plastic, so be careful. And mine doesn't line up the greatest with this intake. There we go. And where's that? There it is. Okay, on. Gotta put the bolt in. Put this bracket back on. Ooh, that doesn't line up, does it? Okay, so this whole thing flexes a little, so I only needed like a millimeter, pushed down about a millimeter, and got my threads lined up, so that's tightened down. This in here, you gotta, it like bores into the plastic, so it's tight most of the way going in, so just once it snugs up against that, you're done, so you don't break the plastic. And you would want to be careful installing all this. Let me get this, not to get that trap down in there. Let me reinstall this, so pop that down in there, snug these down, and I need to go get my old bolt for that bracket there out of my old one. I set it back in there so I wouldn't lose it. Okay, so this little tang actually goes in there, and that's what your bolt screws into, the threads on the bottom there. But you got this little wire piece there, it hangs down in there and it doesn't let you pull it out, so you just got to bend that smaller metal piece there up, slide it in the new one, and then press it back down, lock it in place, and install your bolt. Alright, so that should be everything reconnected as far as on top of the engine and the intake and plenums and all that goes. And then of course reconnect your negative cable. And then other than that, you just got to add coolant now because of the coolant loss. Now it wasn't a whole heck of a lot, so you should be okay with not burping the system or anything like that. Which on this one, I don't know that you can, I don't think this is one of the standard, you would I guess burp it through this, but you're definitely going to have to replace the amount of coolant that you lost. Obviously this had the Ford red pouring out of there, so you know if that's what you want to use, go ahead, but I'm not getting into another coolant debate. So anyways, fill this sucker up, let it run, monitor it, let it get up to operating temperature, and let it run for a few more minutes after that. Then monitor if this went down any, and then if it did and it's below you know, full, top it off again. Go down the road, not too far from the house or wherever you're at, make a loop, make sure all is well. If everything still seems okay, check your level again, then go for a longer trip. Everything's cool, you know, keep an eye on your temp gauge and all that. But like I said, it really shouldn't be an issue because it didn't lose a whole lot of coolant, so it should just be topping it off, and then you know, make sure you're not overheating or nothing like that. Don't get air in the system, which I don't think it would with just that small amount of loss. And you know, make sure you're full when you're all done checking it, and that's it. So like I said, if you want to see any of the other install videos, just check out the Mustang playlist. I got a bunch of pull videos on there before, during, and after modifications, which I'll be posting another one now that I have headers and these ported manifolds on here. I'll also be going back to the track to see what it runs. Currently I'm actually awaiting another header to come in because mine had a defect. If you want to know about that, watch the video, but I can't run it yet because I have a leak because of a defect. So it's supposed to be another 2 or 3 weeks out till I can get that replacement header, and then we'll go do some runs with it. But anyways, if you want to see more of the car, check out the Mustang playlist. Appreciate you watching. Please hit that like button for me. If you want to be notified when I post, make sure to subscribe and click all on the bell to receive all notifications. And other than that, I'll catch you guys on the next one.